Evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to another edition of the Pie Chat Live. Hope everybody is doing well, and this should be a really interesting, insightful discussion for us today in the testing world. With me are two great people from PSI Skills for English, and if you've not heard of Skills for English, where have you been? Either way, you will find out today. I'm joined by Lesinda Leightley, Director of English Test Marketing, and University Recognitions Lead, Tom Williamson. Thank you both for coming on. We're really excited to have you here on the Pie Chat Live.
Thanks very much.
No worries. So a few sort of housekeeping announcements before we start. As usual, we're nothing if not consistent here at the Pie. We do have a couple of polls for you today. So please do go ahead to your right and just click on the polls button so you can answer these. The first one is, if you are an education agent, are you thinking about diversifying your business into other types of visa applicants? Okay, interesting. And then the second one is for the HEI people in the building. If you work within HEIs, have any SELT providers ever reached out to gain feedback on their services? As always, we want to know where you're tuning in from in the world, and also your comments about what we're talking about today. So please do go ahead and let us know in the chat. And of course, we also want you to ask your own questions to our panel. Please do submit those in the separate Ask a Question box on right there, and we will get to those further towards the end. Okay, well, let's jump in. Lesinda, I'm going to start with you. Perhaps sometimes things can get lost, sort of perhaps new products and things like that. Perhaps we should just get a quick reminder of what PSI Skills for English's core mission is.
Thank you, Sophie. Good question. So for us, our core mission is to offer quality, secure home office exams for visa applicants to help those candidates reach their dreams of the UK, studying there, working or living. And then, of course, we would like to become the default name. When someone talks about SELT, the first thing they think of is Skills for English. So that's kind of our main core vision for the year.
Absolutely. And you're saying for this year, but what is on the agenda for this year coming into 2024? Because obviously lots of things happening, and we are fully out of the pandemic now. One hopes. So perhaps sort of take us through a bit more of that agenda in the coming 2024.
Thank you. So yes, it's going to be a very fun year, actually. Very excited. As many of you might know, last year we decided to completely focus our efforts on our SELT exam. We continue with that vision during 2024, meaning that the UK is our main focus, and any kind of visa applicants going into the UK. So what that means for us is looking at our partners, our partner infrastructure, very strategically opening new partners in areas where we can see growth or where we need them. Investing time and resources into those key partners to help them grow and help us kind of embed that SELT, the SELT vision that we have across these key territories. Basically building a solid foundation with a focused amount of clients in key areas. That's 2024's main objectives.
Yeah, those key areas. Okay. I'm just going to stick with you for a moment. Tom, I will get to you. Don't worry. Why would an agent want to work with PSI? I mean, they've got a lot of choice after all when it comes to testing and that sort of thing. So, maybe give us sort of what you think, why an agent would want to work with you.
Hopefully because we're fabulous, right? But of course, I think one of the key things is what you just mentioned, choice. Candidates nowadays want to have choice. They want to be able to decide what test they take for what reasons, right? So there's many tests out there that is very popular for the for higher education, for example, whereas we are, we've kind of split our efforts into higher ed as well as the visa journey. So we offer that option of having one exam for those multiple types that you might apply for, and also the availability and the flexibility that we have. We have a very vast network of test centres, and because we own the actual test centre network ourselves, we are very flexible in opening slots and making sure that candidates can find appropriate dates. In the case now, a candidate can, from the moment they do their SELT exam to the moment they get the results, it can all be within a week. And speed is essential, especially applying for, higher education, as there's dates, but also for visa changes coming into place at the end of March. People are trying to get their visa processes completed as quickly as possible, and we can help facilitate that speed.
Yeah, I mean, those slots especially, it's so crucial right now, because there's so much demand coming in from some countries that it's really important that there are enough to handle that without people going down wrong avenues just because they're desperate to get a slot. So having that availability is really, really crucial. And also that versatility as well of the test, I think is just really good point to just reiterate there. Tom, it's time. I'm going to come to you now. You're not left out any longer. So as opposed to this agent relation side, you are perhaps a bit more versed in sort of the institutional side of things when it comes to Skills for English and SELT. So what is your relationship like with these partner institutions of Skills for English, and perhaps those that you could partner with as well?
Thank you for the very interesting question. I also would like to thank everyone for coming to listen to us waffle on for a certain amount of time on a Tuesday. I appreciate everyone's interest. So as someone who's been working with universities for just over 2 years now, as well as someone who works in universities, myself, I am a PhD student. I'm a lecturer at UE. My research is an intersection of linguistics and neurosurgery. I also, I'm based part-time at Oxford.
Sorry, linguistics and neurosurgery. That's not a combo. That's not a combo you hear very often.
Well, that's why I'm doing the project. I'm so inspired by it, really. I don't think people have come here to hear about my research, so I think I'll carry on speaking about the more interesting topic of Skills for English. Yeah, well, depending on who you ask, I suppose. Yeah, so I'm based at other universities as well. Like I'm based at Oxford in the linguistics department. I'm based at the University of Southern California and in the Center for the Neuroscience of Embodied Cognition. So I'm saying all this because I understand the university perspective. I work in universities, I work with people in universities, and that sort of perspective allows me to understand how best to add value. And that's how I try to define my relationship with universities as far as possible. 2 examples of this are the candor with which I try to comport our university relations side of things. So, for example, only last week, and this is sort of partly what's inspired the poll for HEIs in this call.
Just a quick reminder to go and answer those, by the way.
I'm doing you a favour there, the reminder. No, I actually actively try to solicit feedback on how they've experienced our SELT revision. Nobody has any complaints, and nobody has had any complaints ever. So I was like, well, maybe there's something fishy going on there. So I asked, and again, everybody seems happy with our provision. So I'd be curious to see whether other university staff have had that from anybody else. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's how I try to define my relationship with universities, to try and add value as far as I can.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, sort of adding value, obviously there's that side of things, but I also really just want to get to the bottom of something, because with agents, testing companies the world over, they'll say theirs is the best, the most unique, and they'll really try and entice universities to work with them. So I want to know what really sets Skills for English apart, because there's a lot of sort of elevator pitches, but why is Skills for English the one to do?
This, I think, is a really fun question, a really good question as well, because I can imagine I think for anybody in any industry, it's almost a bit uncomfortable, as perhaps in still our infancy as a startup, because we have only been around for a few years, having started our SELT provision 4 or 5 years ago. We have had the opportunity to analyse the sector and consequently try to disrupt where we can. And where we can are in some key areas, like how we, as a SELT, are in more countries than any other provider. We own test centres in more countries and it's by quite a long way as well. It's not as if it's 1 or 2. It's 8, 9, or 10. I can't remember the exact number. Of course, it changes quite regularly. Yeah. But it's something like 160 million people can only access a SELT with us in their country. Otherwise, they'd have to go to a different country to take a SELT. That's one of our real genuine value adds that is unique. Alongside that, I think that the gold standard security practices that we're known for in the sector are really reassuring both to institutional, governmental, and partner agent partners. I can get into that more a bit later in a later question, perhaps, or if somebody has more questions from the chat. But this is something that we're known for, and I think it allows our partners to trust us, and I think it allows students to trust the fairness and the integrity of the qualification.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that just the sheer number of people that you can reach with that SELT is just that's really something else.
Yeah, I think that diversity and accessibility are really critical concepts in our industry and have been for a number of years. And I think our approach shows that we don't just try to pay lip service to that fundamental importance, that we actually are trying to be more accessible and help diversification.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, obviously, you have the partner institutions themselves, but maybe let's dive in a little bit deeper to, sort of that edifice, right? What would you say are the responsibilities of admissions offices at universities in the process of accepting skills for English? Maybe just take us through that process and how that works.
Yeah, well, so I think to some extent I'm perhaps preaching to the choir. That's not an expression. It is preaching.
Yeah, it is preaching to the choir.
Okay, well, depending on who's obviously in this call, right? Some people will be more aware than others of how accepting any English test goes, and part of that is obviously doing due diligence with respect to things that I've just mentioned, like security and accessibility and the test content. But assuming that's all sort of okay, sorry, I just put something on my desk. The next step is to try to map skills for English results to any other test minimum requirements that you may have. So to ensure that the students are coming with the right level for the right course at the right time. Then the next step would be to try to list skills for English on your website and the list of accepted English tests that you would display publicly. That's really important because it allows us to fulfill our goal of trying to help you be more diverse, increase accessibility. With the fact that we're in more countries than any other provider, I think it's quite clear that you'd want to exhibit that on your website to show that students in let's say in Bolivia. I think we're the only test providers in Bolivia. If someone's in Bolivia, they don't have to go to Colombia or something, or Peru. That's important. And on that same theme of conveying information to people in their own countries, it's really important to provide updates to your in-country offices to let them know that you've accepted an English test that's new that they may not have heard of before, so that they don't end up turning away students or going against your central institution's policy. That, I think, perhaps on the to-do list of an admissions office is one of many, right? But for us and for students, that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps just sort of bouncing off this, we sort of touched a bit on expanding access, and generally for testing, you were saying, for example, a country like Bolivia, you're sort of trying to make sure that they don't have to cross country lines just to make sure that they can do a test. How constant is that mission that you have of expanding access, would you say? Either of you can answer that one if you want to, no problem.
Go ahead, Les, if you like. I've been speaking a while.
Can you just tell me again? So what you want to know is how do we look at expanding?
Yeah, expanding access to the test and where you're offering it. And you're saying that you have all of these testing centres, right? And obviously you know, the goal is to expand that access sort of every day. So what is the process for expanding that access to testing at Skills for English? Because obviously it's a key to your sort of your USP, I suppose.
Yeah, so you know, we already have an incredibly big testing network that purely tests in the IT space.
Yeah.
So when we are constantly looking at statistics, we're looking at global movement. We know where there's certain countries in Africa, for example, we know there is you know, a lot of footfall from these countries coming to the UK. If we don't have a test centre there, we will either use the existing network that we have there, that's a PSI or an IT training centre, or we will approach a partner that is already working with us in some capacity and ask if they would, you know, want to open up as a test centre and run the tests themselves. So that is the one way we're doing it, very strategically in places where we know it will make a difference. Also, you know, it's you mentioned that it's important to us, but it's also very important to the Home Office that tests are accessible, that people don't have to go too far to be able to do their test, right? So we're also quite careful not to cannibalize business from existing clients, because you also don't want to be opening too close so they take business from each other. So there's actually a lot of work going around that. But, you know, apart from opening centres in places, we also ensure that there's enough seats open. We make sure that we are able to open more seats if we can see an increase in demand. So it's a very dynamic process that's constant between myself and the ops team and the BD team, seasonal. So, you know, when the, you know, university exit or when the sign-up stages are coming or taken. Yeah, so there's quite a long process, but very, very well thought through. And, you know, each partner is very much audited and checked before we open a centre.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm just gonna unless no, okay, so I'm gonna just go to the polls now quickly, because we've now had a few votes. People are a bit timid today, but we do have a few people who have told us where they're tuning in from. So on the education agent, are you thinking about diversifying your business into other types of visa applicant? I am sure that you are quite pleased to know that the answer is 100% yes. So, I mean, does that sort of encourage you guys in terms of engagement just generally among agents for 2024?
Sophie, absolutely. You know, I've definitely seen a shift over the last 6 to 8 months. So, you know, in the previous strategy, Skills for English was also very heavily focused on the higher ed world. So a lot of our testing partners or, you know, reseller partners were focused in that space. Yeah. And since we've kind of pivoted slightly and started focusing a lot on the work and the spousal visas as well, we've kind of brought those partners with us, and kind of, you know, they've really embraced this new focus and strategy. And, you know, we were able to do the training and help them with their marketing and the support of candidates and getting the business into their systems and into their centres. So I'm very happy to hear that, because things are so uncertain at the moment with all the changes in all the various countries, especially to international student mobility. And, you know, there are other avenues where you can still have a revenue stream that is not too far from what you're already used to doing as a, you know, as a consultant, really, as an education consultant.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, I'll just come to you for the reaction to this. This is an interesting one. So if you work with an HEI, have any SELT providers ever reached out to gain feedback on their services? And of course, you mentioned the importance of this. 50% have said yes, but 50% have also said no. So what do you think about that?
The thing is, because it's equal, I can't really draw any sort of conclusion, can I? You know, I don't, 50-50. I think perhaps that shows that there are, I mean, how many votes were there? Was it like 10, 20? No,
it was only a few votes, unfortunately. We've not got many.
Considering irresponsible clients to generalise from a small sample, you know, that's my response.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, I'm going to just ask one more question, and then we do have a question in the Q&A. I'm just going to pivot now to something that continues to be quite a big topic among testing and otherwise, but it's very important in testing, is security. and the aspect of security within this sort of English language testing world. You've got a lot of centres, as we have already discussed, that you have to manage as part of your work at Skills for English. So what is the protocol like for you as, PSI, when it comes to securing these tests? Because it's such an important part of the work.
Do you want me to take that, Liz?
Yeah, I guess we can tag team on this one. Why don't you kick off and then I'll fill in the
yeah, sure.
gaps if it.
Well, one point that I'd like to stress about the protocol itself is that, I mentioned the term gold standard before. I can substantiate that. I can evidence that by saying that when we first won the UK government, the Home Office SELT contract, the protocol, the steps and everything were, so rigorous and basically so secure that the Home Office didn't need to add anything else to our steps for onboarding a test centre beyond a Home Office security clearance, which would have been required anyway. I think that really goes to explain how secure our practices really are. Some of the steps have been communicated through other platforms that we have, like marketing collateral and so on. But some of the important points are the kind of inspections that we do of the centre, the kinds of training plans that we have staff complete, that we sort of prepare ourselves, and they have to go through several weeks worth of training. The installation of security software and hardware, if required. There has to be for example, a CCTV requirement and the capacity to retain that for 60 days. I did a webinar a while ago with our head of security, and that's all available on our website if you want to go check that out. That went into this in incredible detail. And one point that we actually tried to stress in that is that we're also transparent about when we've had to act on security malpractice. And we have examples in that webinar of test centres being closed down in various parts of the world for infringements that we're transparent, saying this was malpractice, this was fraudulence, and we can't abide by that. So we take this really seriously because we know that we should, and that it matters to all of our stakeholders. Absolutely, yeah. Lesinda, did you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. Tom, great answer. I would just also say that even our marketing team, security for us is something that stretches through every single department, right? So it starts from the onboarding of a test centre and the people who vet them to all the way through to tests being marked. So the markers are trained to spot instances of, recurring answers that seem the same, so we can immediately, there's very, very distinct things to spot that will, kind of give you a hint that there's something there that's not right. And we will usually get auditors out there on the same day, at late the very next day. That's also why we have a 48-hour booking window and not a 24-hour booking window, because once you can see a massive sudden increase in last-minute bookings, that we're always going to check what's going on, is this how it should be? So, safety first for us, definitely, and especially because, like Tom said, the Home Office contract, right? It's crucial to have that security in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to say one thing. Abhishek Tiwari, if you you've been trying to get on stage, but if you have a question, do put it in the Q&A chat for us. Just because we'll have only our panelists on the stage. We would love to see you. We just like to answer questions. Absolutely. So I'm actually going to stick with security here because we have a question on that, and predictably, it has come up once again, is the prospect of AI. And sort of, are you perhaps worried about AI technology compromising test security? But maybe, as you were saying in that, Lesinda, the security seeps through to every department, that importance of security. So perhaps how does it affect, how are you worried about how AI might affect the entirety of your security system and what that could mean?
A good, very technical, tricky question, but a good question. I know that one of our main topics this year at our summit was becoming leaders in AI in testing, right? So there's constant work being done to ensure that the integrity of our tests remains, solid, but then also how we can use AI to actually do the opposite, stop those from happening. So in essence, we're leading the way in AI development into how to detect fraudulent activities, how to block and stop people from actually doing those things like that happening. The actual technical bits I cannot verse you because I'm not techie at all, but PSI has a podcast at the moment that they run on a monthly basis, and I believe the last couple of podcasts was very focused on AI in testing environments. So if anyone is interested, we could share with them the link if they wanted it, but it will tell you a lot more about how we are embracing the all AI world. And we have no choice.
In the chat maybe towards the end. So
I'd like to add to that as well, just to potentially alleviate any concerns about test day security. Is that the software that we install on all of the computers prevents any kind of access of any other software apart from our proprietary testing platform, blocks anything else. So for example, if you're doing the writing section, you of course can't access ChatGPT to go and write you an answer, for example. Of course, you can't use any sort of large language model or anything like that. So that's all sort of completely locked down while you're taking the test as a requirement.
Yeah. So in short, you're not worried.
that would be a far too complacent statement, I think.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so we do have one other question here from the audience, and I'm afraid it's probably a question you might have been expecting. Very recently, the testing company ETS has acquired PSI, and as that Skills for English, and obviously that's been sort of perhaps maybe a morale boost on the ground. But what do you think this means for PSI that you've been acquired by ETS? Thanks for that question, Carlos.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We all are very excited about it, and the only thing that we see right now, remember, it's early days. We're still going through the transition. I mean, the first thing to note is that PSI will continue to run as a separate entity in its own right, okay? Nothing changes for the way we are set up right now, apart from in the not too far future, having more opportunities for people that's already in our network. The idea is to add and not take away. As of now, everything remains as it is. Our clients are, our partners remain our partners, and we will take them with us wherever we go. So, as of now, it's just opportunities and nothing else, but nothing set in stone yet. Nothing, like this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Yeah. We're still very, very early days.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Janet Garcia, the head of PSI, and she said that confirmed that no sort of jobs are being lost or anything like that. This is very much, as you say, an add, not take away sort of acquisition. Perhaps just as we've got sort of a minute and a half left, I'm just going to ask one more question myself. Just being selfish here. So obviously you've got the recognition from sort of the Home Office, and also quite recently the recognition in Ireland as well. The whole world at the moment is really looking to diversify when it comes to that. We've seen Canada's expansion of recognised tests, for example. How do you slot into this in terms of sort of the worldview of that? What would you say is the next move for you in that sense?
I'm happy to answer that if you like. Yeah, I think at the moment our strategy is to focus on those existing, relationships that we have. I think expanding beyond our means would be irresponsible to the partners that we're trying to build close and strong ties with. And along with that, trying to increase our capacity for those partners. Absolutely.
I mean, what's the word? I'm trying to think of the phrase. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, exactly, right.
But yeah, so that's a great note for us to end on here. Unless there's anything else you guys would like to sort of let the people know before we finish.
No, and just thank you for everyone. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. That was really lovely, Sophie, to be interviewed. And of course, any questions, if anyone has anything afterwards, feel free to get in touch.
Absolutely. And speaking of getting in touch, you can click the link below our three faces saying contact Skills for English, and then that way you will be able to contact them directly. Thank you so much to both my wonderful panelists, Lesinda and Tom, and to the audience. We really appreciate you coming and being interested in our content. So with that, I will let everybody enjoy the rest of their Tuesday, and thank you so much for coming. Goodbye.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.